about the opportunity that this industry has really gone through. And so I want to do something a little bit unorthodox here. Share some lessons in leadership through the lens of great storytelling, specifically great movies. So first, a little bit about movie making 101. Great stories are traditionally written in 3 acts. In the simplest terms, first, there's the setup, right? And then usually in the setup, there's a challenge or a conflict in the second act. And finally, in the third act, a payoff or the resolution. Act 1 is essentially the introduction. It defines the situation, gives you a window into the characters. And to bring this to life, I want to play a clip that won from a film that won an Oscar for the Best Original Screenplay back in 1998, which coincidentally was the year that Aspen-Dykema was founded. Good Will Hunting. In the first act, you'll see here, boy meets girl and sparks fly. Let's take a look.
I swallowed a bug.
You're an idiot.
What?
You're an idiot. I've been sitting over there for 45 minutes waiting for you to come and talk to me. But I'm tired now and I have to go home. And I couldn't sit there anymore waiting for you.
Well, I'm well.
Skylar.
Scott.
Oh, by the way, that guy over there, Michael Bob-Fontana. Haven't seen with us, so to speak.
Yeah, no, I kind of got that impression.
Okay, well, I've got to go. Gotta get up early and waste some more money on my overpriced education.
Oh, I didn't mean you.
That's all right. There's my number. So maybe we can go out for coffee sometime.
Oh, that's a big little bitch's ass. Do you like apples?
Yeah.
I got a number. How do you like them apples?
How do you like them apples? One of the most memorable movie lines ever. But the scene is your classic setup. Boy meets girl, some flirtatious banter, right? And they're off to the races. But the story would be pretty boring if it was just smooth sailing from there. So in Act 2, that's when the stakes start to get raised, right? There might be a big obstacle that's preventing the lead character from achieving the goal. There's a complication, sometimes a confrontation. And in the case of Good Will Hunting, it's not an external conflict, but an internal struggle that gets in the way. Let's check it out.
I went on a date last week. How'd it go? It was good. Going out again? I don't know. Why not? Haven't called her. Guys, you're an amateur. I know what I'm doing. Don't worry about me. I know what I'm doing. Yeah, but this girl is like, beautiful. She's smart. She's fun. It's different from most of the girls I've been with. So call her up, Romeo. Why? So I can realize she's not that smart, that she's fucking boring. This girl's like fucking perfect right now. I don't want to ruin that. Maybe you're perfect right now. Maybe you don't want to ruin that. And I think that's a super philosophy. Well, that way you can go through your entire life without ever having to really know anybody.
You see what I mean? You've got a guy who's so terrified about being let down and disappointed that he's decided it's better not even to try. He gets in his own way. Ultimately, he's afraid of failure. And finally, of course, comes Act 3, the resolution. The story typically ends in one of two ways, in victory or defeat. Let's take a look.
professor calls about that job, just tell him I'm sorry. I had to go see about a girl. Well, son of a bitch. He stole my life.
So there it is. Our hero makes the bold move, takes the big leap. One of the things I love about that scene in particular is you don't even see him get the girl. You're just left there with the idea that he has to go see about her. There's this anticipation, and the next phase of the journey is just beginning. I think the reason why we're all drawn to great stories is because they teach us things. And that certainly holds true when I think about the story of our industry and the leadership lessons that we've learned along the way. And that's what I want to spend some time on reflecting over the next 20 minutes or so. So let me first take you back to the mid-1990s, Act 1 for the DSO industry. Back then there was a lot of capital flying around, a lot of different industries, and just like other industries, dentistry was heating up too. There's a lot of people entering the market, it was flush with cash and capital, and of course, just like the dot-com bubble, there were plenty of early models and businesses that failed in dentistry as well. Those business models they weren't viable, right? They were high growth, moving fast, overvalued, highly speculative, and just because they were moving fast, they just weren't a winning model. Specifically, the ones that didn't add any value to patients and providers. And just like Amazon though, other tech companies, some businesses did survive. And there were a few models that survived in dentistry as well. And being on the stage at the ADSO Summit a month ago really brought me back to those early days in the industry. We may not have had a lot of business sophistication in those early days, but we learned what was working and what wasn't working. And that's the interesting thing here about how the industry has evolved, because we all approach the category in different ways, and we're all building our models in different ways, but we were focused on adding value to our patients and our providers. For Aspen specifically, we viewed ourselves as the insurgents, going to battle on behalf of the patients who organized dentistry forgot about or left out. It was a part of the population that we viewed as undervalued, not well understood, and as a result, underserved. I've always thought about the traditional practice as the no practice. No, we don't take new patient appointments. No, we don't accept your insurance. No, we're not open weekends. No, we're not open Wednesdays. No, we don't hand out our fees. And we thought, in a world full of no's, could we be the yes organization, right? Could we actually build retail locations open on weekends, evening hours, on-site labs, giving people choice and access, accept their insurance, free new patient exam, breaking down barriers or help get patients the care that they need. And all of those things was really meant to give access. And we knew it worked really well, and we were off to the races. The leadership lesson for me from Act 1 is you really can't create any value without clarity of purpose. Meaning, what is the why? Why do you exist? Why should a patient choose you? Why should they choose us? I view the world as consumers have choices. The question for us is, are they voting for us? Are they voting for you? Are they voting for your practice or your platform? Why should a provider choose you? They're consumers of our business support services. Why should they choose you? When we know that the provider demographics are changing and changing fast, are you meeting their needs? Why should they choose you? Why should they stay? And are they aligned to the things that they think are most important? And most importantly, do our teams understand the why? To be clear on the why and our purpose. When I think about us, for example, we have 18,000 employees, team members across 1,300 locations, serving 40,000 patients a day. I have to ask the question, are we all tugging on the same end of the rope? Are we really aligned? Are they really clear about what we're supposed to do for patients and providers every single day? I think it's foundational. Without starting with the why, it's impossible to create long-term, enduring organizational value. And compared to the early days when we were really just a handful of DSOs out there. Fast forward to today, there's over 1,000 DSOs. And between Aspen-Dykema and Clear Choice, now we have over 1,300 practices across 47 states. Together, I like to say, how do you like them apples, right? The organization, the industry has grown in such great ways over the last 20 years. But what's interesting is, when you think about growth that led to Act 1, growth can be a really good thing for sure, but growth can also bring conflict, and it can manifest itself in different ways, both internally, like you saw in Good Will Hunting, but also externally too. Think about it. Because of the growth of the industry, we're all faced with increased competition. Competition for patients, competition for dentists, for oral surgeons, for specialists, for hygienists, more competition for talent, more competition for capital. Then you have models that have gone in different ways, some de novos, some through M&A. And for all of those who've grown through M&A, you might be struggling to say, how do I bring these platforms together? Am I adding value? What are we doing collectively? For those of you growing through de novo, you might be saying, how do I build these de novo practices consistently over and over again with predictable results that drive a high and attractive return on investment? How do we do that? Which is particularly important in this market environment. As the industry gets more complicated externally, the businesses also can get more complicated internally too. For Aspen, I can tell you there's been plenty of good things that come from growth. Growth has driven a lot of opportunity in the business. Purchasing power, scale, efficiency, all those things have been incredibly helpful to the business. Investments in new technology, our learning development programs, all those things are really foundational to us. And of course, it allows us to invest in our people and teams. And growth creates opportunity for people to grow too, our teams to grow. I hope that we're getting smarter. I hope that we're getting sharper. And ultimately, growth allows us, though, to serve more patients and more providers across the country. But while growth has so many good things, the truth is that growth creates complexity and bureaucracy. As some of you may have heard of the growth paradox, the concept is pretty simple. Growth creates complexity, complexity kills growth. And while I'm a big believer that growth is a good thing for all the reasons I just ran through, the truth is it can also slow down your decision-making process. It can hinder your ability to be nimble and respond quickly to market changes, conflicts, or challenges. For us, going from the insurgent small startup now to a larger scale business, you can imagine the complexity. I shared this simple story with my team not too long ago. Think about our website, how critical that is for us. You can imagine, that we want to be flexible and moving fast with the market, and making those changes. And when I think about where we are today, all of a sudden now, to make those changes, you have creative people, copywriters, IT, legal, digital merchandisers, and what used to take maybe an hour or a half a day now takes weeks to make a simple change. We have an army of people to make one website change. Suddenly, we have complexity in the organization. And one of the things I found as a leader, I'm not only accountable for ensuring that the business reaps all the rewards and benefits of our size and scale, but I also have to be maniacal about weeding out the complexity and the bureaucracy in the business. As you grow, in my opinion, you have to maintain that ownership mindset. You have to be obsessed with the frontline leaders and the ability to fight like that insurgent brand while never losing sight of your purpose. And that leads me to the third act. And the question for all of us in this room is, what will the future hold for all of us? What will our next act hold for you? As an industry, we're at this really interesting inflection point. We've got a large, more mature DSOs out there that are trying to figure out how do we sustain growth? How do we sustain profitable growth? We have mid-sized DSOs out there. Some have done acquisitions and are struggling to figure out, what do I do with this platform now? How do I add value in this particular platform? We've got some emerging DSOs who are in the process of figuring out, who are they? How are they going to differentiate? And we know there's going to be further consolidation. We also know that there's going to be winners and losers. There will continue to be people out there that want to disrupt your model. And of course, we know that there's going to be copycats. And to be successful, you sort of have to be willing to interrogate your own model and to be honest about who you are and what you want to be, about how your customers' wants and needs are constantly changing, not just the customer, but the providers too. I always think it's helpful to look at other industries and companies for inspiration. And there's really no one better than that to look at than Apple. Apple launched the iPod back in 2001, and it completely revolutionized the personal music device industry. Some of you maybe remember the tagline, 1,000 songs in your pocket. They created the industry-leading product that created a ton of cash, and it made Apple sell more than 400 million of them over the years. It would have been pretty easy, I think, right, for them to just continue to do the same thing over and over. But Apple had this obsession with innovation, not only for the sake of innovation, but because they had this vision to deliver the best user experience, make the best products on earth. So despite having this cash cow, Apple made the bold decision to disrupt themselves by launching the iPhone. And the iPhone not only displaced the iPod, it rendered it extinct. But they were willing to make that choice because they knew they had to do that in order to stay ahead of the consumer. They understood the consumer will continue to change. And we know that new brands will come out and they'll understand how to meet those needs of the changing needs of the consumer, because we know that they're going to change. We know that existing brands will continue to iterate and find a better way too, and then we know some brands won't, and they'll fail. Believe me, there's a graveyard of brands out there that no longer exist. Which leads me to my final leadership lesson as you think about your next act. Chase customers, not competitors. Chase customers, not competitors. Think about what's happening in the marketplace. You've got everything at your fingertips. Uber Eats, DoorDash, Instacart. You can buy a car without ever stepping foot in a dealership. Everything is changing and changing fast. The consumers act and behave fundamentally different. Everything in your life is changed. Think about how you interact with all these brands today versus where you were 5, 6, 7, a decade ago. It's changing really fast. And yet sometimes we get so obsessed about what our competitors are doing and thinking about how to stay ahead of them, when the reality is we need to be focused on chasing the customer, the consumer, the patient, the provider in our case, right? How are we differentiating for them? How are we winning share? Why should they come to our practice? Why should they come to your practice? They are the ones driving where the market will go. Chasing our competitors won't help. Chasing our customers will help you. And if you're not evolving with the consumer's wants and needs, if you're not meeting the consumer where they want to be met, the same way Apple did, then you'll soon be overtaken by someone else. As I wrap up, let me take you back to that final scene from Good Will Hunting, when Matt Damon drives off because he's got to go see about a girl. And I can honestly say, after more than 25 years in the business, I think about that unknown future as the most exciting part of our journey. We all have had these critical inflection points, but I think despite what's happening in the economy, despite what happened in the capital markets, we're still at the early stages. I love thinking about the future. We're blessed to be in this category. Because as leaders, I believe we owe it to patients to go see. I think we owe it to providers to go see. I think we owe it to our teams and the organization to go see. And we owe it to ourselves to go see. The last thing I'll offer up is this. As your business evolves, so should your leadership. The reality is that you can't lead the business the same way you did 5 or 10 years ago. You need to listen to what the business is telling you every single day, and the different stages of growth that you'll go through, and be flexible and adaptive, but also staying true to your purpose, the reason why and what got you there. And while we're all here as leaders of our own organizations, the reality is that none of us can get there alone. None of us. You need to have the right team around you. It's a challenge for us as leaders. How do you bring together people from different backgrounds and different viewpoints and with different strains? And how do you get them to come together in the pursuit of the same goal? And I can tell you from experience, you can have the most talented people in the world on your team. But if they're not willing to work together, to be successful within the system that you've created, you'll never achieve the success that you've aspired to. And in the spirit of that, and on behalf of our incredible partners at Strawman, who are sponsoring this keynote speaker this year, I'm excited to introduce our next speaker. He's someone who knows a